What do you think about the idea of Victoria Police investigating themselves, finding such an outcome?
It's corrupt.
Were you expecting any different?
I would have thought after everything that's gone on the last 2.5 years, 3 years, that they would have got something a little bit better than that.
What were you more surprised about? The fact that they lied about your injuries, claimed they can assault you because you weren't injured, even though you were, but let's pretend you weren't, or the fact that they called your actions unlawful after withdrawing their own charges, so you've never been charged with anything?
The whole lot.
Avi Mini for Rebel News in Melbourne, Australia. I've come here today to keep you posted on a story you've been following with us for the last couple of years, where a group of lockdown protesters who, during the lockdowns here in Melbourne, travelled to the city to protest the harsh restrictions. Now, they were ordered to move on at the time, and when they complied with police, you see in the body-worn camera footage, they were followed almost all the way back to their cars, where police rushed across the road, pouncing and bashing the group. Now, the one that they first targeted, Jay, you will remember, he was dragged through the courts for over a year and finally won his matter, forcing police to withdraw on the day of his trial all the charges and paying his costs. After that win, when we caught up with Jay, he promised to take it further, which he did. He filed for an investigation with IBAC. We're here today to find out what happened. So last time I spoke to you was after your case had been withdrawn by police and they paid your costs.
Yep.
The story, for those who don't remember, was that you were at a protest with a group. Police gave you a move-on order. You followed those directions and they followed you all the way, almost to your cars.
Yep.
Right when you got to your cars, what happened?
They ran across the road and assaulted.
Punched you in the face.
Took my legs out. Yep.
There was a brawl. You were charged.
With the fray, resisting arrest, not obeying Cho's orders. So, and that all got thrown out.
What did you do next?
We filed an IBAC report to investigate the police.
What happened?
They asked me what were the outcome that I wanted, and I just said that I wanted the police to be investigated as it was if we did it to the police. And
so as if you walked up to the police or ran across the road and punched them in the face?
That's all I wanted, just a fair go for them to be investigated.
So you filed that investigation to IBAC and
they said they were under-resourced and they put it to the police to investigate it for them.
For the police to investigate themselves?
Yep.
So what'd you do?
I spoke to the investigator on the phone, told him I wanted the police to investigate it the same as they did us, and he gave me back a report, I reckon probably about 2 months later, saying it was my fault. I was the leader, I instigated it, and everything that we copped on that day pretty much we deserved. Okay,
so first start with your reaction to IBAC handballing the investigation.
Well, it just shows the epitome of a conflict of interest. Okay, you've got IBAC. I mean, the government's a cartel. Okay, the government chooses the judges. They choose them. They pick them. There's no separation of powers. It's the definition of a cartel. The police commissioner is appointed by the government. So there's a big issue here anyway. IBAC, it's meant to be the independent, broad-based anti-corruption commission. They're meant to be the ones that independently investigate police and government corruption. It can't be independent because they're being funded by the government. So when the government's funding them, there's no independence anymore.
But in this case, he's saying, I have a problem with police. So he goes to IBAC. It's an independent body to the police. Fine.
But it lacked funding. They didn't have the resources to actually do the investigation.
But then they've handballed it back to police. That's where police. I think there's an even deeper issue.
It's basically a conflict of interest on top of conflicts of interest. Okay, you've got the police investigating themselves for their own corruption. If I was a thief, a bank robber, but I can't say, hey, I'll investigate myself and I'll come back with a report as to whether or not I was actually there at the crime scene. It's ridiculous, but this is the reality. So we think that there's all these checks and balances and that they exist until you actually need to use these, all of these different mechanisms that are meant to exist in our government, and they don't.
So we've got the letter here. We've got the findings from the internal review, the internal investigation of Victoria Police.
Yep.
And what they've essentially said here is that there was no apparent or obvious injury caused to you, and the other matters raised by you, such as the embarrassment caused to you and family, were entirely through the fault of your own actions and being intentionally present for unlawful reasons. So the first few points that I take from that particular paragraph is, one, if you assault someone and there is no injury,
They were fine.
then you're allowed to assault somebody. But in your case, was there injury?
You had a black eye.
But that doesn't count because you identify as a person of colour, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just had to clarify that for
I had
them.
sore knees where they tripped me over.
So there were injuries?
They were injuries.
Not that it matters.
No, it didn't matter. And I did say that to him. I go, I'm not worried about the injuries. I go, I just want the police to be investigated so it doesn't happen again. And he did ask me what will happen. And I said, should they be in the police force, not only the coppers that did it, or the police officer that behind the scenes that give them the order to do it. That should be investigated as well.
It would seem from that police are allowed to assault you, they're allowed to actually injure you, then their defence can be two things. You're uninjured, even though you're clearly injured, or two, that it's your fault, you broke a law,
Yeah.
but we're not going to hold, we can't prove that you've broken the law. So they haven't proven that they've broken, in fact, they've paid your costs. If the state pays costs to withdraw charges, it's saying that we got it wrong.
Exactly.
You didn't break the law, because otherwise, 9 out of 10 times, if they just want to end it because of the, you know, as we saw in a lot of these other cases, it just wasn't in public interest. What they did was they withdrew the fines, but each party has to bear their own costs. That's what they do. Yeah. When they pay, even for that last hearing, when they paid you costs, it is a form of admission you did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But how can police now say you did something wrong?
Don't know. It was actually surprising to get that and blame me for the whole lot.
So I'm still being prosecuted by the police for allegedly assaulting police who actually assaulted Jay.
For coming to his defence in that same incident where they've withdrawn the charges, but they still blame him for getting bashed for injuries he doesn't have, that he does have, that I'm getting this is a very, very confusing incident to follow.
Well, to make it simply put, we were targeted. I know I was targeted. I've got the body camera footage, you know, I've from their own body cameras where they're literally pointing me out saying, that's Nick Patterson over there, let's get him. So I know that I was targeted. I had police come to my house in the middle of the night 5 times in a row. And the reason that they're taking me to task still is because they're keeping me on those bail conditions, which restricts my ability to travel, it affected my ability to speak as well. And they know that it's bankrupting me. Just the sheer cost and volume of work that needs to be done. They know that this is, you know, impossible for most people to be able to afford. But it doesn't cost the police any money to take you to task and write up false charges that you haven't committed any offence.
But if they get it wrong, they can investigate themselves.
Well, that's true. They can investigate themselves. Or we can ask IMAC to investigate, but I don't think they're resourced enough because the same people that are causing the problems seem to be funding the people that are meant to be the transparent, third-party, independent body that, so anyway, it's basically a big bluff, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to back down. We're going to go to the end. And
your mate didn't back down. He fought it through to the end. They withdrew it on the last day, paid his cost for that day.
Because he's a champion, that's why.
He's done pretty well. And he's just exposed, I think, in this letter, the lack of any transparency, and it's mind-boggling, especially when they can just blatantly lie like that. So how do people who do want to follow this broader case, what happens with Jay and with your case, which was on the same incident, where can people find and follow all the little details on it? There's a lot more about it. Where can they find that? Yeah, so I've got a website, fightcorruptpolice.com, and I've got a Telegram. I'm not censored on Telegram. I'm not restricted. That's t.me/fightcorruptpolice. And I'm keeping people up to date with the court case. Look, I just need people to back me on this. We're going to try to get thousands of people out the front of the county court on the 1st of June. And they're trying to rob justice.
and I'm not going to let them rob justice. I'm going to stand my ground. I'm going to stand in the truth to the very end, and I know that if I endure to the end, I'm going to be the one that comes off better off, the one that wins, because these people are used to pushing people around with all these false charges, and they know that we're ignorant of the law. But I've been studying the law for years. I've spent a lot of time with a few different lawyers that are friends of mine, so I have enough of a knowledge to know that they don't have the winning card in the end.
If you think it's important for the world to see what's still happening in the name of health, make sure to like, comment, but most importantly, share it far and wide, because as we know, the mainstream media since the beginning of COVID have been uninterested in reporting the truth. So it's up to you guys to let the world know what's going on. And then head over to fightthefines.com.au. Check out the people that are still fighting today for what happened in the last few years through the lockdowns across our country. Fightthefines.com.au. Watch and share all their stories, and if you're willing and able, please contribute to those fights that are still going on today. Fightthefines.com.au.